Hi. Oh, I'm not going to steal the key of the show here, okay? You are in a session for advanced pizza making. This is the special edition for brick ovens. If you're kind of surprised by that, you might be in the wrong place.
I like pizza.
Then we're good. So do I. SimplyTest me. This is a community case study. My name is Adam Bergstein. I go by Nerdstein. This is a real live action shot of me right here. I am the VP of Engineering at Hook 42. I love Chicago. I love this camp. I have a great time coming every year. What a nice reflection of the community. Honestly, it's great. Yeah, I'm very, very honored. Before we get started, to really dive in, every time I think of Chicago, I kind of reflect back and imagine this guy here and kind of his, very unique, distinct voice when he's presenting, things on baseball games before he passed away, obviously, Harry Carey. And I'm a Pirates fan, right? So it's a little, I kind of now have some bittersweet feelings because the Cubs are now kicking the crap out of the Pirates every time they play each other. But hey, here we are. I still think very highly of Harry Carey. He was very unique, very distinctive. But one of the things that kind of occurred to me, especially because we do work within a community, is he was able to have a pretty decent impact, even just being an announcer of a baseball game, right? Very familiar, people know him. And he has a very positive, I think, influence on the game and the larger sports space, right? So we're going to talk about a different kind of impact today that I think is important to note. Brief outline of the talk. We're going to talk a bit about some motivations behind the project, the current technical architecture, roadmap and vision, and questions. This is condensed down as much as I can for a 30-minute format. I'll do my best. Project motivation. So how and why did this system come to exist? What is it trying to do in the world? And it'll be a little bit of a history lesson and why the project came to be and everything like that. First and foremost, I'm sure that some of you have seen this image before. In fact, I even think someone put this in their talk earlier in a presentation that I watched. But I would guess several of you have seen this. But one of the things that is kind of irrelevant about this picture now is ModX and Joomla used to be a little bit more influential in the space, maybe not quite the case anymore. But I think its statement on Drupal still rings true, right? There's aspects of Drupal that I think are definitely complex, but my hope, and I think the hope of many in this room, is that that's not an evergreen statement, right? I think we should always be striving to make it is the least amount of complexity as possible, but it is a very powerful system. And Drupal is hard, right? That's why. It's highly extensible, it's powerful, it can do a lot of different things within a digital ecosystem. So of course it's naturally difficult to learn, difficult to use. And in any given day, it occurred to me as I was looking at this very recently that, if you're a Drupal engineer, you could touch any of the following things I'm going to rattle off in any given moment in time. PHP, Drush, Composer, CSS, JavaScript, HTML, Twig, testing frameworks. And guess what? That's not an exhaustive list. So even if you know this technology, of course, Drupal then adds its own conventions on top of that, right? Makes it even more specific or bespoke. So there's things about Drupal that, really, again, we're taking even a whole complex technical ecosystem and then putting its own thing on top of it, right? So it's a bit daunting. Would you all agree? So how do people get started figuring out Drupal? How do they even get moving? That was the entire motivation behind SimplyTest, is to give people a way of soft launch into Drupal, right? SimplyTest Me is both an open source project and a free, completely free service. It is offered, and I have maintained this now for just about a year. It was created back in 2012 by Patrick D, and I took over about a year ago after he was looking to transition the project. And the project, I believe, is a vital service, but it's one that really focuses on lowering the barrier of entry for new or existing community members that want to learn more about Drupal, right? or contribute to Drupal. So I'm here to share what I've learned and talk about where we're going. But in its most basic form, users fill out a simple web form online. They talk about what they want to test in Drupal. They put in a few things. They pick a module. They put a patch, doesn't matter. And then they click a button. And within a few, maybe a minute or so, they get a whole new Drupal site spun up for them. Has all the stuff that they specified, and it's ready to go. Those instances remain up for about 12 hours, and the process is almost 100% automated for them. So the key thing to understand is that it's not only an open source project. All the code that runs the site is online. As open source, people can contribute to it, but it's also a free service. So we allow community contributions, but the service aspect of it has its own infrastructure, is highly customized, and it's a bit interesting. And this service has been running now for every major version of Drupal since Drupal 5. So that should give you some time frame about how things have had to evolve. So what are some motivations about the project? First, its entire purpose, its sole purpose, is to help people use Drupal and lower the barrier of entry for any community member that wants to be involved and participate. But this project itself is a labor of love. Contributors like me and other people, Amy June helps out, they do so 100% altruistically. It's all based on goodwill. We recognize that the community is stronger when everyone is supported. Right? And so we try to provide this tool as a way for people to learn, and we want to introduce them to concepts like what is core, and what are modules, and what are themes, and how do you run a distribution, right? And usability is really the focus. We want to try to make it as easy as possible for people to do that job. And so we want to reduce the complexity and then let people learn on their own course, right? So that to me, I think, really helps people to do that. And contribution itself is also a major motivation. This entire project is run almost 100% on open source tools and projects and Drupal itself. It's like Inception, right? Everything really helps to keep the community flourishing, and as much as we can, we help out other projects, other technologies like Nginx and HA proxy and other things that you'll see in a moment, that we contribute to that whole broad ecosystem by using this tool. And all of this is really done in an automated manner. Everything is automated, right? We want to try to push DevOps and continuous integration practices as much as we possibly can in this process. And our community really was able to leverage that when Drush was released back in 2007, right? Jeff might know the exact dates, I don't recall, but roughly around that time. And that really helped the DevOps space and this tool to really take off at that point in time. So today we are able to leverage a lot of the benefits and learnings of this automated DevOps approach. And as a project lead, my role and responsibility is basically to make sure that this product remains vibrant, it continues to be supported for this version, future versions to come, and it's void of corporate interest. So one of the big things is this is not run by a company. This is 100% community driven. We do have sponsors, I'll talk about that shortly, but the goal is to remain as unbiased as possible, keep the service 100% free for people to use, and maintain that as an operating principle for this. And I think those are going to serve as key factors as we talk about the rest of where this project is going. Right now we do have 3 infrastructure sponsors. 2 of them are legacy and 1 is new. Druid and Maloon have been sponsors forever, as long as I have ever heard of it. And Linode recently gave us a really nice credit amount that we can run all of our development infrastructure using Linode to help people to contribute back to the project in a safe and sane way. All right. So let's talk a little bit about the technical architecture. At a very high level, and again, I'm going a little quick because I have to respect the timing here. We have like the web front end, right? We have a web server, and what that does is it always queries Drupal.org to get project information. So you say, hey, I want to test views, and then it goes and returns the version, right? And you say, okay, or I want to test this patch, and it goes and loads the patch from Drupal.org. And then you hit submit. When you hit submit, that goes and sends it to the SimplyTest backend servers, which go and set everything up. We'll talk about that more soon. Returns a loaded instance for you, and then that goes back through and redirects to the new instance, and you can use it. Okay? That's the process involved. And so there's really two types of servers that we have within SimplyTest. There's the web front end, and then there's the back end instances. That's a good way to look at it. And how does all of this work? Well, one, we leverage all the Drupal.org project metadata. So we look at the web service APIs from Drupal.org. We pull all the project stuff, the versions of the projects that are on there, a lot of metadata about Drupal core, things like that. We leverage Drush and Composer for tons of automation behind the scenes. And the sandbox servers, the things that run the instances, is one big, giant, monolith LAMP server that spins up virtual hosts and databases and everything, okay? So it's good to keep in mind. Also behind the scenes, we have a HA proxy, which is terminating all of the requests. That's how we run and set up our security certificates and all the subdomains that get provisioned for the instances. We use Let's Encrypt to regenerate those security certificates. LXC is running all of the infrastructure. Everything that is running behind the scenes through the instances are using Linux's, kind of conventional container technology back pre-Docker, right? And those maintain both the web server and the sandbox instances. So we can easily back it up, we can easily restore it, we can load it on other servers if we need to. And then we make strong use of SSH between the servers, and guess what? Bash scripts. I feel like every single automated tool just always falls back to bash scripts. It just does, right? I mean, it's like the tried and true. But let's discuss something. Where we are today and where we've come, we have constantly been building modifications around, new versions of Drupal. We added Composer in for 8, right? And there's a lot of, diversity in kind of the technology that has been built into the system since 2012, right? So it's been a while, and it reflects that. The current infrastructure has a ton of technical debt, and it looked a little something like that, right? Tons of different things that you can do, and it's been kind of wired together, and you can go through a long maze of different approaches and tools, and it's very, very difficult, I think, for us to maintain that at this point in time, because it's been a series of incremental changes, right? But the result of it is now we have a pretty complex and fairly fragile architecture running this site. And everything is very hand-coded, and it's kind of, it's just fragile is the right word. Even the smallest of changes, they could be prepared for weeks, right? And tested on local systems or development servers and all these things. Have some edge cases that end up breaking anytime that you end up pushing a change out, right? So it makes things pretty miserable for people that are actually using the system and for someone who's trying to maintain it. And so we've accrued a lot of technical debt, and it's very, very fine-grained and bespoke. And so it's kind of hard for us to evolve it in a rapid manner. It's the right way to frame it. But I think we're heading in a good direction. So what's the overall kind of gut check of the project as it stands today? First and foremost, it's fairly stable, okay? The system is running. The biggest challenges we really have right now are trying to kind of keep up with Drupal core and the changes that are rolling into these minor versions of Drupal. Trying to maintain distributions is very hard, because in Drupal 8 especially, there's a lot of kind of distinct differences between distributions. So that's really difficult. But we're fairly stable, and the monolith is kind of running, and we're not making major changes to it. So that's really where we are. But the real key of what I want to talk about here is where this is going, because I think this is the cool part. Maybe I'm wrong. So I'm going to share a little bit of my vision and kind of the roadmap of where this stuff is heading. And there's a perfect African proverb that sort of summarizes this philosophy that I'm trying to adopt. If you want to go fast, you go alone. If you want to go far, you go together. And the key thing with SimplyTest is we need to make sure that it is opened up a lot more for people to use more effectively and contribute to. So the first thing is we're going to be making a major upgrade for the web UI to use Drupal 8. And there are so many inherent benefits for doing this. First and foremost, it's going to give people a lot more access to these new systems and these improvements that come with Drupal 8. But also, we're going to be able to, as a system, we're going to be able to benefit from a lot more of the ecosystem around with Symfony and all the other technologies that we could pull in with Composer to really leverage a great kind of broad PHP and other ecosystem benefits, I guess is the right way to say that, right? There's other projects we can use, we have access to it. And I would believe, or I would hope that in doing so, we would be able to make it more attractive for people to contribute back to. And there's a lot of things that need to be done to be able to do a Drupal 8 release. There's a lot of features of storing the information, making sure that SSH is working between the different servers and APIs, and logging all the information, trying to block certain traffic if it looks malicious. There's a lot of stuff going on to try to make this goal happen. But I feel like getting into Drupal 8 will help us to start with a clean architecture for something new, something fresh, and give us the opportunity to do something in a cool and modern way. So we are going to replace the current Drupal 7 distribution with a new Drupal 8 and hopefully Drupal 9 supported platform. The next piece is really around the experience. One of the things that the current UI, I feel like it looks like it was kind of built in the 90s. It's got sort of an old vibe to it, and and it's fine, it's functional, right? But it might not reflect that the project is maintained and is cared for and nurtured. It just looks old, right? And that's fine. But we're going to make a new experience. And guess what? Where a new experience comes in is also an opportunity to add more useful features for people and make it more intuitive to use. So we have proposed a whole new UI with a lot of features tied to it. This is open for discussion. This is not done or settled or anything like that yet. And so my goal would be to try to iterate on this to make it as clean and straightforward as possible to give people the best experience that they can. And those little yellow tags that are on here all have annotations that talk about different behaviors of what happens and how the different interactive parts of the interface work. So it's a pretty complex kind of set of things, but there's a lot going on. And the next thing is really trying to roll out a refresh in terms of the design and the look and feel. And we want to try to make that also as cool and as slick as it possibly can be, and also like pleasing to the eye, and accessible for any user to use. That's another major goal. So we've proposed kind of a new look and feel. We have a new logo. The stickers are out there on the sticker table if you want to grab one. And at some point in time, once the Drupal 8 system is there, this will be the theme that's in place to replace it. And it should be cool, right? So this is also open for feedback. If we want to make some adjustments to it, now would be a great time before we get too far down the road. But honestly, I think it looks a little more modern. I think it looks a little nicer than what we have now, and certainly reflects something more vibrant, I think, to move forward. All right, here's some big news. Thanks to the fine folks at Lullabot, it has long been my goal, if not my #1 priority, to figure out how to remove the monolith, the big giant lamp stack sitting under the hood that causes me fits, keeps me up at night, causes lots of pain and suffering, and is wired together with rubber bands and balsa wood. We need to do better, and there's been a lot of discussion, and one of the most desirable things is to have a truly container-based infrastructure, because whenever you spin things up, that stays alone, and any changes that we make to it will only affect things that are provisioned after it, and it's naturally destructible, right? So all the infrastructure that we want to make the instances run for 12 hours, to tear them down, to provision them easily is like so much cleaner with something that is container driven or Docker or anything like that. Tugboat is a project maintained by the Lullabot team. It's a product that you can purchase for your own needs, and it spins up previews. So if you're working within an infrastructure of you're building a site, and you want the ability to add, say, like a preview for one of your pull requests, right? You can use a platform like this, and it spins up. It uses containers and has configuration and gives you a nice preview of the changes you've made. It's great for QA processes. As of 6 months ago, they opened it up now to have an API, and that API allows for people to provision their own instances, and it's not just tied to changes or pull requests. That basically meant that SimplyTest could use it. And the fine folks at Lullabot have been kind enough and generous to offer their infrastructure for free for SimplyTest to use to do that. Huge deal. It's very big. Thank you. So I could not be more excited. I'm so excited by it. I already ported a module to Drupal 7 for Tugboat. I will do Drupal 8 as well, and we are working diligently to get this in place as soon as possible to make use of the infrastructure. I think it'll help everybody in the process. So thank you so much. I know there's some Lullabotters bots in the room, so thank you. Send that up to your folks. Cool. The next thing is I try to be opportunistic, right? There's a lot going on in terms of the ecosystem, and the Drupal project itself makes use of Google Summer of Code, okay? They sponsor every year, and we've been lucky to be accepted for the last several years, I think at least 6 or 7 years now. And I submitted SimplyTest as a possible project for Google Summer of Code. So we are in a position now where I've identified 3 different maintainers, or 3 different people that have some part of where I see the system going. And then I've defined the project to be moving the Drupal 8 version forward. So we're going to be building a React front end to do the interface, get all the benefits of using that. We're going to do the Drupal 8 web UI and all the backend that we need for the logging and the instances and all of that information. We're going to implement the new design through the theme. And guess what? We're going to get that Tugboat integration moving. So that'll all be going through Drupal 8, hopefully as a Google Summer of Code project. It'll be a great opportunity for these students to learn. There's a lot of pieces that they'll be able to touch and learn from. And I fully expect that with me and some of the other mentors that I've identified who have already worked on SimplyTest, it's going to be a great time for them and a good experience and very helpful for the project. Now I want to remind everybody though, and the really key thing here is look at what we've been able to accomplish with that much money. Literally. There's no money exchanged. All the infrastructure is paid for by the sponsors. There's no money given to any of the people maintaining or contributing. It's 100% free. Free for everybody, right? But that has limitations, right? Even maintaining the infrastructure is expensive. Even trying to leverage or look at these containers are expensive. And so it is hard to imagine a service that is sustainable without some sort of revenue that, if it's needed, without me paying out of pocket to do it. Things need to kind of grow and evolve. 3 months ago, we established the SimplyTest Open Collective. And this Open Collective allows for any person in the world to make donations, big or small, to SimplyTest. This could be individuals, it could be companies, and we are in the process, I'm working with some folks in the room right now to create packages for camps or conferences and other ways to try to raise funds and talk about the benefit of using SimplyTest for these different kind of entities and events and things that happen within the community. So we're actively working on that marketing material to try to put together why it's appealing, why people might want to contribute to it. And I have some exciting news here too. One of the programs that we have established for SimplyTest is trying to set up demo frameworks. And our very first demo framework sponsor is here. Ryan from Commerce Guys, aka Centauro, who is going through a brand new rebranding, just agreed earlier this week to be our first demo framework partner. What that means for them is they will have a button on SimplyTest for any user of their platform to come in and spin up a demo of their framework directly on SimplyTest, right? In exchange for a donation back to SimplyTest to keep the project running, right? We'll be looking to extend that for other frameworks, other demonstrations, depending on the need or the interest, but I can't tell you how excited I am to have Ryan and Matt and Bohan's framework running on SimplyTest. It's a great fit, I think, for both sides. So one would say, hey, you have some money, right? You've raised some funds. What do you want to do with it? Well, what we want to do with it is we're going to give that money back to someone or a set of people. And we're going to create new contributors for the community through an inclusion program. We're going to raise those funds. We've already been talking with some folks, some training partners, to establish a prorated discounted training. We're going to purchase books and computers and have like a 2 to 3 month internship with SimplyTest to give people hands-on experience and then help them with job placement after the program finishes up. So all of the funds that we raise, not all of it maybe, but a large number will go towards helping this program get off the ground, to create new contributors to Drupal, to give back to this platform in doing so, and hopefully make the whole ecosystem continue to flow. I am right at my time box. I want to thank all of you, and I will certainly take questions, and I appreciate your time and your listening. Cheers. Oh, sorry. I thought you had a question. All right.
I was thinking, you're talking about one of the goals of SimplyTest being a learning platform, and I think I kind of sparked an idea thinking about the Drupal 8 user guide or the new user guide system, and how we can tie in SimplyTest Me, or kind of pair those, have kind of the same goal, and maybe how we can foster collaboration between the open source learning tools.
I'd be happy to explore that. So the question or comment was through some of the more like mentoring slash.
No, the Drupal 8 user guide.
Oh, the user guide. Oh, okay.
Drupal.org/docs/8, and on the right side there's a link to the Drupal 8 user guide.
Okay.
Which is basically an open source guide through how to learn the concepts around Drupal, maintained by Jennifer Hodgson.
Oh, cool. Okay, I can reach out to her. So just for the microphone, looking at the Drupal 8 user guide as a doc, as a potential opportunity for to integrate that with some SimplyTest tooling. Yep. Cool. Yes.
So about distributions,
yes.
Explain why that's so hard, and if there are plans for developing that.
Indeed. I think the number one reason, and Ryan might be able to speak to this a little bit better because definitely his distribution is one of the larger ones in the ecosystem right now. A lot of the tooling, it really comes down to tooling. The ecosystem around Composer and having some CI systems that are more advanced or different even than the test bot on Drupal.org that you could wire in more infrastructure or different checks and things like that. You have more control over infrastructure that sits kind of outside of it. So these are oftentimes GitHub projects that are running through their own conventions, like things like creating their own project, like Composer Create project, and it's Drupal Commerce, or Drupal Composer Create project Acquia Lightning, right? These are examples where they're not following the same model as what it goes with Drupal. So it's just, there's a lot of benefits to doing that. And really the benefits are that You have a lot more access to different tooling. It's a kind of more robust ecosystem, I would say. And really, it just makes it harder because a lot of the things with SimplyTest are tied to Drupal.org. If things are working with Drupal.org, chances are it's going to work with SimplyTest, right? But when you start getting into a lot of the custom tooling that you're able to leverage, that's when things get really tricky for me, because it just makes it harder because each one of them tends to be different. Acquia Lightning has a lot of its own dependencies and packages and things that it uses, and same with some of the commerce tooling, right? But they're able to leverage that because that's one of the strengths of using Composer and having all of your own packages and an infrastructure that you can test it with. Does that answer your question?
Yeah. Is there a way to make a distribution more SimplyTest me friendly?
In 7, yes. There's a lot stricter conventions in 7 that people follow, and most of them follow it very deliberately, like around makefiles and how you name those makefiles. That's one example of that convention. In 8, I've actually not seen a lot of distributions being maintained on Drupal.org for 8. There are times when there are artifacts that are pushed, like releases or some parity between like a GitHub project and a Drupal.org project, but it's very, very unique for every single one. So it just makes it a bit more challenging. And I'm also I don't consider myself an expert in distributions for 8. So I think the question you pose is a very valid one, but one that I would struggle to answer. I think we need to wrap things up, but I want to thank all of you, and I hope you have a wonderful day. I'll be here for questions if you need it. Thanks.